This is a video tutorial for this beautiful sweater that has a granny square trim. This is meant to accompany a pattern that is on my Etsy, Loopy Mountain Crochet, which you can download from there. For materials, you'll need a smaller hook and a larger hook. I'm using a 2.75mm and a 5mm hook. For yarn, you can do the colors however you want. I did 3 different colors for the granny squares and then another color for the main body, and I'm using the Skein Tones brand. So first on the sweater, we're going to start by making the granny square trim along the bottom of the main body, and then we're going to work the main body up until the armholes, and then we're going to work the front and back panels of the chest area, sew it together to make the neck hole at the top, and then we're going to make the trim for the sleeves, and then work up the sleeves and attach them to the main body. Start by grabbing your smaller hook. I'm using a size C or 2.75mm hook, and make a magic loop. First, chain 3. And then work 2 double crochet into the center. Next, chain 2 and work 3 double crochet into the center. I sped this up a little bit. And then after 3 double crochet, chain 2 and repeat that again, 3 double crochet into the center. And again, chain 2 and work 3 double crochet into your center. So you should end up with 4 clusters of 3 double crochet with 2 chains in between, but in that very first cluster, it'll actually be chain 3 and 2 double crochet. Then insert your hook into the 3rd chain of that beginning chain 3, and grab a different color yarn, wrap it around your hook, and pull that new color through to finish off a slip stitch. Tighten everything up, and now we're going to work with that new color. So chain 3 and turn your work. For this next part, make sure you're working over all of those ends. So you're going to work a double crochet into that corner space, or that chain under that chain 2 space, which is considered like the corner of your square, and you're going to work another double crochet. So again, you'll have chain 3 and then 2 double crochet, then chain 2 and work 3 double crochet into that corner space. So now you'll have 2 clusters of 3 double crochet with 2 chains in between, but again, that very first cluster is actually chain 3 and 2 double crochet, but that chain 3 is meant to mimic a double crochet. Then chain 1, and you're going to work into that next corner space, or again under that chain 2 space from the first row. You're going to work 3 double crochet, then chain 2, and again work 3 double crochet into that same space. And then at this point I stopped working over the tail, and I'll trim all those tails at the end, but you can always leave longer tails and weave them in, which is probably a little more secure. So after that cluster of 3, you're going to chain 1 and then repeat into the next corner. So each corner will have 2 clusters of 3 double crochet with 2 chains in between them, and then there's going to be 1 chain between each corner. So now insert your hook into the 3rd chain from that beginning chain 3 and pull your new color through into a slip stitch. And again, to start the round, chain 3, turn your work, and then work 2 double crochet into that same space. And so this is working under that chain 1 space of the previous round. Then just chain 1 and work 3 double crochet into the corner, chain 2, and then work 3 double crochet. So that's always going to be the same pattern in the corners, is 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. And then when we work along the side space, you're going to chain 1 after the corner, work 3 double crochet into the side space, and then chain 1, and then do another corner cluster of 2 clusters of 3 double crochet. I hope that makes sense. I think watching the video is probably the most helpful. So again, just work that same pattern all the way around. Once I reach the end, I'm going to slip stitch again into the top chain of that beginning chain 3. Then you're going to keep working slip stitches the rest of the way down the side of the square. So I'm just inserting my hook in under each stitch, and then in that chain 1 space, I'm putting my hook in, working a slip stitch, and then going all the way until I reach the corner. If this is the very first square you made, then go ahead and fasten off. But once you make that first square, for the next squares, you're just going to go ahead and attach it right onto this chain. So I've already kind of done this, but it's the same thing if you're starting out with attaching to your first square. So I'm just lining it up, and I'm going to insert my hook into the corner and then into the corner of the other square and work a single crochet. Then insert into the next stitch and then into the next stitch on the other square and work a single crochet. And you'll repeat this all the way down to attach the two sides of the squares together. So now I am approaching the end of those sides, and the last stitch you're going to work into those two corner spaces on each square. Again, just working a single crochet, and then go ahead and fasten off. So remember, when you attach the granny squares, make sure you're doing it so that all of those tails end up on the same side, and so that the seams are all on the same side as well. And now I'm just trimming up those ends from the granny square. So create as many granny squares as indicated in the pattern for your size. Again, making sure that the seams are all on the same side and that the tails are all poking out of the same side, because for the next row, we're going to work over those tails. But first we need to loop all of the squares together so it's one continuous loop. So take the squares on each end and match them up, again making sure that the seam is going to be the same side as the rest of the seams, and making sure to start on the other side of where all the tails are so that the tail will end up on the same side as the rest of the tails, if that makes sense. Insert your hook into the corner spaces of each square, and you're going to attach this in the exact same way. So grab a color and chain 1, and then work a single crochet into that same corner space, and then keep working single crochet all the way down to attach. And as you can see, for my colors, I decided to alternate the colors that I used in each square, but you can do that however you want. So now you should end up with a continuous loop of granny squares, and this is going to be the bottom of your sweater. So at this point, I recommend trying it on, making sure it fits around your waist, and then you can always adjust the number of squares if you need it to be bigger or smaller. So here I'm showing that in between each granny square seam, there's kind of this thing that ends up happening that looks like a stitch. And so you're just going to pick one of those, and you're going to pull your main body color yarn through and chain 1, and then work a single crochet into that same space. And I'm making sure I'm working over the ends of my granny square seams. And also I have the granny square seams facing the inside. So then I worked a single crochet into that corner space, and then I'm going to work 3 single crochet into those next 3 double crochet from the granny square, and then I'm going to skip over that chain 1 space and just work 3 more single crochet into those next 3 double crochet stitches. So skipping that space and going into that next double crochet. So along the granny square, you'll have 9 single crochet because there's 9 double crochet that you're working into, and then you'll have 2 single crochet on either side of those 9, that's working into the corner space. So you'll see I'm about to work in the corner space at the end here. And then you'll have that 1 space in between the granny squares that you'll also work into, which means that for each granny square you'll have 12 single crochet. So you'll know you have the right number of single crochet going around if you have however many granny squares times 12 that number of stitches. So again, I'm working into kind of that weird space that the seam made, and remember to work over those tails, so the tails should be on the side that you're working over, and working single crochet. And so you're going to do this all the way around. Again, it'll be 12 single crochet per granny square. Once I reach this last stitch, I'm going to just slip stitch into that first single crochet, chain one, and then turn the whole piece. Now we're going to get started on the main stitch pattern. Remember that you made a slip stitch, so make sure to skip that slip stitch and work into the actual first single crochet. Work one single crochet, and then work one double crochet into that same exact stitch. Skip the next stitch and work one single crochet, one double crochet into the next stitch. And this is the pattern you'll be following for most of this project. One single crochet, one double crochet into the same stitch, skip a stitch, and then repeat in the next stitch. So for this main body, you're going to work that same pattern all the way around. So now I'm coming up to the end of this round. I'm just going to finish it off by working again one single crochet and one double crochet into that last stitch, and then slip stitch into that very first single crochet. And this is how you're going to finish out every single round. Chain one and turn, and then we're going to repeat that. So in the first stitch, again, not the slip stitch, but the actual stitch, which is going to be the last double crochet of the previous row, you're going to work one single crochet and one double crochet, and then skip a stitch and repeat. Once you get around, slip stitch to the single crochet and chain one and turn your work, and you'll just keep working rounds just like that until you reach the number of rows indicated in the pattern. So now we've come up to where we need to start forming the armholes. So you don't want to fasten off your work yet. Divide the number of stitches you have in half and place a stitch marker halfway across at that point. And for the next round, it's going to start off as if you were continuing another round of the stitch pattern that you have been doing. So I'm just finishing off that last stitch. Make sure you turn your work, and we're ready to get started. So again, just working single crochet and then a double crochet into that first stitch, skip a stitch, single crochet, double crochet into the next stitch, and keep going until you get close to that stitch marker, and then I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to work all the way down to the stitch marker there. Okay, so I'm coming up onto the stitch marker. So I'm finishing off this stitch, and then once you have 3 stitches left, including your stitch marker, I'm going to skip the next stitch and then work a single crochet into the next stitch, and then instead of working a double crochet into that same stitch, I'm just going to work a double crochet into that last stitch where my stitch marker is. Chain one and turn, and then we're just going to keep repeating rows just like that. So again, just single crochet and double crochet into the first stitch, skip a stitch, keep repeating that pattern all the way down, and then you're going to do the same thing at the end of this row like you did in the previous row, and I'll show that one more time. So keep working the normal pattern until you have 3 stitches left, and again, this is where we started that previous round. So I have 1, 2, 3 left. I'm going to skip a stitch, work a single crochet into the second to last stitch, and then a double crochet into the last stitch to finish it out. Chain one and turn, and then you'll just keep working rows back and forth like this, and this is going to build up that front panel. So after working the number of rows indicated in the pattern, go ahead and fasten off, and this is what your piece should look like at this point. So you'll just have one of those panels done, and now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we want to insert our hook right there and then work along this way until we have the same number of rows as that first side. So find where you ended that last row where the tail is, and then go down to that last row of the main body before you started the panels, and then you'll insert your hook into the next stitch and pull your yarn through and chain one, and then work a single crochet and a double crochet into that same stitch. Then keep working that same pattern all the way until you get to the other side. And again, once you have 3 stitches left, skip that next stitch and then work a single crochet and then a double crochet in the last 2 stitches, so not in the same stitch. Chain 1 and turn. Keep repeating rows just like that until you have the same number of rows that you had on the front panel. But this time, do not fasten off once you reach the end. Okay, so this is what your piece is going to look like. So you'll have the main body and then the front and back panels. So now we're going to sew the tops of these panels together in on either side, from one corner to the center and then from the other corner to the center, leaving a space at the top, and that's going to be our neck hole, and then that'll also form our armholes. But what you want to do first is make sure your work is inside out. So the way you can tell is that the seams of the granny squares should be on the outside, so that when we stitch the top together, the seam is also on the outside, so that when we turn it right side out, all the seams are on the inside. So I'm just aligning our panels together at the top. Again, I didn't fasten off, so I can just keep using that same work. I'm going to insert my hook into the top corner of one panel and then into the top corner of the other panel. But first I need to actually put the work on my hook like that, and then I can insert into those top stitches. So into one and then into the other, and work just a normal single crochet. You're going to keep doing that into the next stitches and just single crochet together the corresponding stitches on either side of the panel, and the pattern indicates how many stitches to go in on either side, but you can adjust that. So if you don't go in as far on either side, you'll have a wider neckline, or if you go in more, you'll have a tighter neckline. So that can just be personal preference. Once you reach the end, I just slip stitched into those final 2 single crochet and fasten off your work, and then you'll end up needing to weave that end in. So now I'm going to do that exact same thing on the other side, but now we need to actually attach our work just like that. So pull it through, chain 1, and then work a single crochet into those exact same stitches, and then keep working single crochet the same number down that you did on the other side, and I'm just working over those tails. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like at this point. You have kind of a nice sweater vest. So we'll have a neck hole, our armhole, and now we just need to make the sleeves. So we're going to start with the bottoms of the sleeves, which is worked in the exact same way as the bottom of the main body. You're just going to do much less granny squares, and again, that's all shown in the pattern for each size. So I'm just connecting these last 2 granny squares, again making sure all my seams are on the same side and that my tails end up on the same side. So now I'm going to take my bigger hook and attach my main body color, and then chain 1, and again you'll work a row of single crochet all the way around. Remember, it's 12 single crochet per square, so that pattern just remains consistent for the sleeves as well. Okay, so I'm coming up on the end, and I'm going to slip stitch, chain 1 and turn, and then single crochet into the first stitch, and then a double crochet in the same stitch, skip a stitch, and keep working that same pattern just like you did in the main body. So you're going to keep working rounds in this exact same way. At the end, remember, slip stitch into the first single crochet, chain 1, turn. Make sure you're not working into that slip stitch, work into that first double crochet. So single crochet, double crochet, same stitch, skip. I think you got it down at this point, and just work however many rounds are indicated in the pattern. And now we are going to attach the sleeves to the main body. So don't fasten off your work again after you're done with the sleeves. That part where you just finished off your work is going to become like the armpit area of your sleeves, and so you're going to want to attach it to that bottom armpit area of the armhole on the main body, if that makes sense. So just kind of line up the sleeves and the main body armhole best you can, and we're just gonna single crochet those 2 together. So I insert my hook into the main body and then into a stitch on the sleeve and single crochet together, and just keep working that all the way around. Just try to space out where you insert your hook on the armhole the best you can, because there are not obvious stitches there. So if you need to kind of do this a couple times to make sure it's spaced out evenly, that is okay. Once you come around back to the beginning of that seam, you can just slip stitch into the first single crochet and fasten off. So that's what it should look like. Again, make sure at this point all of your seams are facing on the outside. And then you're just going to do that exact same thing with the other sleeve. So make the sleeve, don't fasten off, and then attach it to your work. And then just weave in all your ends. And that is it. You have a beautiful sweater. And I love the stitch pattern that's used on this. And then I think just including those granny squares at the trim gives it a lot of flair and makes it look like it's pretty advanced, but it's actually fairly easy. So I hope you try it out.